The resume is only a brief overview of your work, and it can only tell you as much. When you are talking to the person, there are a lot of subtle um, points that come through which you need to pick up. A lot of the subtle cues you need to pick up. That becomes very, very important because at the end of the day, you're deciding whether or not a person is fit for a particular role in in a half an hour or in a 45 minutes, maybe a few case studies.
Welcome to My Best Hire. I'm your host, Rajeev Soni. On this show, we decode how great leaders identify exceptional talent and how outstanding professionals become invaluable to their organizations. Through in depth conversations with executives and business leaders, we uncover both sides of the success equation, helping leaders build stronger teams while showing professionals how to stand out and make a lasting impact. So, whether you are building teams or looking to advance your own career, join us as we explore the stories of remarkable talent and the leaders who recognize their potential. Today on the podcast, we have Harsh Dewan. Harsh works for a company called Quantifi. Harsh, over to you and
Thanks,
your
Rajiv.
company.
Thanks, Rajiv. I think pleasure to be here. I told you this is my first podcast that I will be recording, so I hope to add value to whoever is out there listening to this. I lead the go-to-market function for strategic accounts at a company called Quantify. We call ourselves a startup. We are 13 years old, but we still call ourselves a startup. We are very young at heart. In fact, Quantify was one of the first AI services companies in India. Started way back in 2013 when people were still getting into the field of analytics. My job over there is essentially to make sure that for our strategic accounts, we maintain our relationships as well as get a new pipeline, get a new business for them. A little more my background. I have worked in multiple roles across analytics and AI. I have worked as data analyst. I grew my career, became a manager, started managing big clients. And after that, now I'm managing sales as well. So it's been a very interesting journey for me. I've seen how the field of analytics and AI has evolved over a period of the last 14, 15 years. And it has also exposed me to a lot of very diverse and very interesting talent. And then you'll be surprised how people have changed fields, how people have grown within this particular industry. And
Absolutely. Let's get right into it. So, who are we speaking about today?
today I want to talk about a very interesting uh, hire of mine. The reason I use the word interesting was because he came from a totally different background and he came into the analytics field and he's doing a superb job right now. I'm going to talk about one of my earliest hires. So I was also not a very experienced manager when I hired him. I was also getting my hands dirty in the field of analytics. I'm going to talk about Dinesh Singh. He was my second hire when I had just taken over a people manager role at WNS. That was the first company I had joined after my MBA. And again, as I said, this was my first role as a people manager. I was also getting used to, so I didn't have the template in front of me as to who was the right person, what are the checklists and everything. So a lot of it had to go with gut feel. A lot of it had to go with, and I was building a business I was building a client, I won't call it a business, but I was building that account as well. It was fairly small account. So for me, it was challenging from two standpoints. One, I had guidance, but I hadn't had the experience of hiring people. The second was that I had to ensure that, there was a little bit of a pressure to ensure that you were successful in hiring the right people because you were tasked with growing a particular account. And, when you're new into an industry and you're new into a company and you're tasked with these two things, it can, you need to take a lot of judgment calls. Fortunately for me, I think this one went off well. Dinesh right now is a group manager at WNS. Even after 12 years, for the past 3 years, he's in the UK, and then he's managing a fairly large client for them. So
Nice. Can you tell me a little bit about your recruiting experience that you had?
love to. The resume is only a brief overview of your work, and it can only tell you as much. When
Sure.
you are talking to the person, there are a lot of subtle um, points that come through, which you need to pick up. A lot of those subtle cues you need to pick up. That becomes very, very important because at the end of the day, you're deciding whether or not a person is fit for a particular role in, in a half an hour or in a 45 minutes, maybe a few case studies. So a lot of it has to go with being in front of the person when you're doing a face-to-face interview and catching up on those cues and, asking some questions and to see whether to gauge whether the person is answering them with conviction rather than just talking a lot of just talking the right things. So as I said, a lot of it is subjective. It's very difficult to define a structure around it. But here's what I can tell you how I try to do it, and how I kind of figured out that he might be the right person for this particular.
Sure, please let's go ahead. These are the insights that people come for.
Yeah. So a lot of it also had to do with the requirements of this particular role. As I said, this was a role for a senior analyst for my particular account. My account was a very, very domain specific account. You required knowledge of sales. It wasn't just technical knowledge that you needed. The focus was again also to give the comfort to the client that we knew what we were talking about. We understood their domain. We understood their language. And also, of course, the technical part came in as a very, very strong, execution from an execution perspective. Dinesh came from a sales background. He came from core sales background. He was there doing field sales. Of course, the only statistics that were important to him were the sales at the end of the month, because that's what matters. Standard deviation, regression, etc. were that's quite literally Greek to him.
Okay.
So when I interviewed him, I could sense that, of course, he was very, very open when he said that he does not understand the language of statistics. But that was something that he was willing to learn. So the one thing that actually was something that worked in his favor was, of course, for the fact that he knew the language of the domain, but the fact that he had a commitment that he's going to learn from scratch.
Mm.
When we hired him, we gave him the probation period, as is always there. He really, really, it gives everybody that, so when you're hiring a person, probation period is a time when you actually get to test the person, whether he's actually doing what he's promised to do or not. And that is actually a very important period. A lot of people think that, probation period is just a, formality, and then after that you just get absorbed. But for certain roles, especially new hires, they need to take that period very seriously. So anyway, that came later. But when we are talking about hiring him, I think the biggest thing that kind of worked in his favor, apart from the fact that he knew the domain really, really well, was that, his commitment that he will learn from scratch. And he was absolutely open about it. He didn't give any faff that, he knew how to code macros in Excel. By the way, that point of time, Excel macros coding was a big thing. So he didn't
Yeah.
he didn't make any pretense that he knew more than he was committing. So he was very, very open about where he lay, and also that what strengths he brought. So again, that was some conviction that he brought on the table. And I would say I took a judgment call, or I took a leap of faith, and I thought I'll give him, why not give him a chance.
Superb. Absolutely. All right. I got that. So that was the story of the hiring. Now, what made his performance really outstanding? What did he actually achieve for your team?
So as I said, the probation period is a very, very important time because it helps you evaluate whether the new hire is a fit for you, and it also helps the new hire evaluate whether the job is for him or not.
Yep.
The first 6 months, and as I said, it was a very high pressure environment because I was also growing the account at the same time. And this is something that we've learned from childhood. The best way to learn is to get your hands dirty, and the fastest way to learn is to throw the person at the deep end of the pool.
Okay.
In both cases, it is not the person who's thrown you to the deep end of the pool. It is your own conviction that will make you decide whether you want to swim or whether you want to, stay at the bottom. I think what Dinesh showed a lot of perseverance in those 6 months. He spent nights learning statistics from scratch, at the same time taking up the responsibility to talk to clients, to deliver what he was tasked. And there were times when I thought that, hey, this guy is just going to give up and he's going to leave. I could see initially it was getting overwhelming for him, because you're coming from a totally different skill set and you're moving to a totally different into a role which requires a total different skill set. Persevered, put in a lot of hard work, and he rewired the way he was working, or the way he was presenting, so that he could actually deliver value to us. I would say, even after 6 months, again, because it was a big 12 jail for him. It wasn't that after 6 months he was a superstar performer, but, that kind of put him into the place where he could actually rub shoulders with other colleagues who had come from a more technical background. I think that's what kind of helped him, you know, pursue that role even further.
Understood. Understood. So that gumption to go after what he wanted, putting in the hard work and doing basically what was required and delivering. These are a few things which I see, which are valuable. How did like there are two parts of a job, right? There's the technical work that you do and deliver, but then a lot of people do it well enough. But most of the best hires that I have spoken with, okay, they bring an element of relationship, those intangibles that make a huge difference too. Can you speak to that?
So very, very important point you've raised, Rajiv. The relationship between a mentor, a mentee, a new hire, his manager, is very, very important.
Yep.
A lot of that drive. So that we all know that we all studied behavior, human behavior. We know that motivation is both intrinsic and extrinsic. So intrinsic motivation takes you to a certain level. Extrinsic motivation helps you go beyond a certain level.
A quick clarification here. Hirsch later clarified to me that he switched up the intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. He meant to say that extrinsic motivation only takes you so far. It's the intrinsic motivation that helps you go beyond a certain level.
So um, it, it required a lot of hand holding, required a lot of it required a lot of fatherly behavior. It required a lot of motherly behavior. Let me put it that way. Right?
Okay.
Sometimes one had to be the strict dad. And I'm talking about, so sorry, Dinesh, if you're hearing this, I'm talking about 12, 13 years back. Things have changed now. But, you're talking about, you have to be a strict father at some certain points in time. You have to be a very caring, very supportive mother at certain points of time. It requires a lot of um, a lot of, from the manager's perspective or from the person who's leading the team, it requires a lot of investment from their side as well. Especially, in his case, it required because it was very easy for him. It was very easy for me to let him fall by the wayside and say that, okay, you're not done a great job, not for you. Why don't you pack up your bags and go? But I mean, it's very easy to do that. But then you have to also take up a role as a team manager, and you know that you have to pull the team up, and these are your foot soldiers. These are the people who are going to help you deliver. So you have to enable them. You have to motivate them, spend time with them, sit with them, and not only just tell them what's wrong, but also sit with them and tell them how to make it right. Coach them, give them the resources which the organization gives to you. It could be training resources from HR. It could be going to HR and telling them that, okay, this is my plan, this is my development plan for this guy. You need to ensure that these trainings are accessible to this person. And, not only that, so also look outside the organization, because the organization is limited with the certain partnerships that they have. Very good partnerships, but they're still limited by that. But also going outside and giving sharing some of your resources, some of the research that you've done in terms of what the trainings he or she can pick up from outside and learn those skills. And we also need to follow up. It's you can give them a laundry list of things to do, but they'll also be busy in their lives. Sometimes I might put it in a KRA. Sometimes I might check after a few months. Have you gone ahead and done this? So this required a lot of investment from me as a team manager, and also knowledge of what are the different things that I have, or what are the different tools in my armory that I can put.
Yeah, you touched upon a very important point in terms of maintaining that balance, whether it's the intrinsic motivations, the extrinsic motivations, as well as the coaching and support which is required to actually have somebody perform really at the elite levels. Not I would imagine the questions did quite well. So, how has their career developed? How did you, as a manager, as a leader, ensure that this person grew and their career aspirations were met in the organization?
Again, this links back to the previous point that you mentioned. A lot of it has to do with your relationship with that particular person. You have to invest in that. They are new to the organization. You're the one who's been there in the organization. So once you invest in that, you get to know you have to also show them as a team leader what is their pathway with the organization. Now, you don't want to be in a situation where 1.5, 2 years down the line, they're saying that, hey, and part of it also comes from the fact that, you are also somewhere shaping that person's career.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So you also need to have a plan when you are hiring the person. You need to have a. It shouldn't be a very tactical. I mean, it can be tactical hires. We do that all the time. But ideally, if you want a person, if you want the team to stay, you need to ensure that the hires are not tactically done. You have a plan. You have at least a plus level plus one visibility when you're hiring. So, for example, if there is a role for a senior analyst and might be having one level up and that position is secure, why do you want a senior analyst? Can you take an analyst? Or can you have an analyst with few years of work experience and groom him to the point that at least he looks forward to becoming one promotion, and then when you're grooming him again, so he gets a 2 3 year horizon instead of just a very tactical hire. So that is something that is on you as a hiring manager. It shouldn't be just I need to do a backfill. I need to have a least when I'm doing the backfill, I need to show or I need to have at least clear clarity in my mind that I'm going to give him a 2 year, 3 year, 4 year visibility. I hope most hiring managers we look at that when you are hiring somebody, don't underpay them and don't overpay them.
Yes.
So sometimes when we are in a hurry, we want to get the best talent, and obviously all intentions are for the good of the organization. But sometimes, we go overboard and, we'll end up paying them more than what most of their peers in the organization. I would say oversights that we do is that when we are in a hurry to hire, we end up paying a lot more than, what the person's peers are getting in the organization. And that creates a lot of discontent. So it'll, again, work for us tactically. We'll have a good resource, happy resource joining us in. And, then the rest of the team is going to be complaining when they get to know that this person is getting a much higher salary. On the other side, the converse is also should also not be done. A lot of the times what we do is when there's somebody who's coming in with a low base, we end up paying them, a certain percentage higher because that's what the increment mandates are, and you are still
Yeah.
end up with a person, a good resource, who's actually below the average everybody's getting. So that is also these are the two things which we should try to avoid. Obviously, real life is this is obviously the best case scenario, but real life is much more different. But I think all hiring managers, it's on us to push back to make sure that that kind of scenario is a when the person is in the when his person is in the organization and is doing a good job. Again, real life scenario, we all know it depends a lot on our budgets. It depends a lot on the organization performance that year. It depends a lot on the industry. There are a lot of factors that are out of our control. But again, again, it's on the team leader's prerogative. He needs to take those hard calls. I mean, I've been in situations where I've put my foot down and said, okay, cut my increment, but give the money to this person because that person deserves more. And I'll talk about that person probably in a subsequent podcast. But that is how much conviction you need. I mean, it's easy to say that, okay, I just have this much and I will do a X percentage increment across the board. That is, again, as I said, real life is very different. But, somewhere one needs to put their foot down.
I understand. How did Dinesh's way of working and doing things impact your own professional outlook about people?
So Dinesh was as I said, he came from a totally different industry. There was a lot of questions which were asked why he was being hired. Like, why is somebody who's a coming from a non-technical background being hired into a technical? I think what he broke a lot of barriers that way. There was a mindset that non-technical people cannot be in tech, and domain is not as important as knowing the technology. But he was a case in point which went against what was sort of pretty much a guideline at that point of time. So whenever I've done hiring, because there are certain skills that the tangible ones can be learned. The soft skills are the ones which, that's what the strength that you bring on the table. The technical skills, even if you're a little weak, I'm sure, if the soft skills are right and the conviction is there, they can be learned. So whenever I've done hiring, of course, there are roles which core are the technical roles where, of course, you need to have certain skills. But what helped me become very bold and takes very bold decisions during my hiring, which were breaking from the conventions. So I've had my share of run-ins with the HR and the recruitment team and all that. But I think that kind of experience has given me the conviction to go and break those molds which typically you put in for a particular role.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So, like, it seems like you had this chance and you definitely took a risk and you decided that this is something that you would want to bring in based on the attributes that Dinesh demonstrated. So, what would be your recommendation for the recruiters who are looking to actually hire such outstanding talent?
I would say that go beyond the resume. The resume is unfortunately given that you will have a bunch of them, so it becomes difficult to sort them through. But I would say give each of them a chance. You cannot evaluate the soft skills over a piece of paper. Now you could encourage the candidate to send in maybe a short 15-30 second video of themselves, just talking about themselves. But think of innovative ways in which you can measure the soft skills as well. Because what happens is we first look at the resume and then you go to the next level when you have a interaction with the potential candidate. I would say that you may lose out on some very, very deserving, some very, very smart folks because of that, because there's a lot of noise in the resume. There's a lot of duplication also that you'll see. So I would encourage recruiters to go beyond that. Think of certain innovative ways, you know, probably do ask them for a 30-second introduction of themselves, and maybe use that also as give that weightage as well.
Okay, understood. So there's an interesting challenge, especially it's now, where for one job you have 500,000, 2,000 applications. It's kind of becomes very difficult. And a lot of people are actually dealing with this right now, including my friends who I have in the recruiting space. And then you have the almighty ATS. So it becomes a little bit of a chicken and egg situation in terms of what do you do. But you're right. My best hire is a person named Akriti. I was hiring her for a social media content marketing role. I decided to call her reference, her ex-boss. Her ex-boss did not recommend her. So I had to dig a little deeper in terms of what she was saying. When I heard her, she didn't have a lot of comments about Akriti's skills and capabilities or even attitude. It was about she was leaving the organization. So I still decided to hire Akriti. 10 years later, she is still a great personal friend. She is the chief content marketing officer for a legal tech company right now. So I fully resonate with what you're saying that, okay, don't go beyond the resume and go beyond to the traditional metrics that we see. And we have to balance it within the ambit of the skill set, capabilities, and the time that we have. I have a next very important question, and this question is for the leaders. What do you think you learn as a leader that help your team members and the people that you work with become the best version of themselves?
As you grow, as your span grows, so there are two things you need to do. You need to inspire the team, right? You have to lead from the top. So there's no two ways about it. Business is all about people. And the work will get done. You have the right technical skill sets. Most of the times things get done, and we do get things done in a fairly good way because most of the team is putting in their effort. But what keeps them motivated is what they hear from the top, and what keeps individual team motivated is the knowledge that, look, the person who's managing me, he is keeping my interests in mind within whatever constraints he's in.
True. So this brings us to one of the last questions that I have. Truth is that we are all professionals and we would love to be featured on My Best Hire at the Best Hire as well. So what's your recommendation for the professionals who are looking to elevate their own game? How can they elevate the impact and capabilities that they bring to the table?
So I think couple of things is that, it's, as I said, there are very exceptional circumstances and there'll be very exceptional requirements for you to get an opportunity to present yourselves when it comes to talking to a recruiter. So how do you stand out? How does that one or two sheets of paper stand out in a world where, probably you end up having AI systems also scanning resumes and shortlisting them, not to in the not too distant future? How do you do that? That is, for the time being, going to be the biggest differentiator for anybody to make sure that their resume is a part of that shortlist. It's becoming more and more harder to differentiate.
That's true. This is about when you are interviewing and looking for a job. What about after you have the job? How do you become that outstanding professional?
You need to establish yourself. You need to imbibe the culture of the organization. Culture is a very, very important part. The important part is you need to have that visibility of what is expected from you over a period of 3, 6, 9 months. That is going to help you a lot. The first part is going to help you settle down. The second part is going to help you get clarity on knowing what you need to do. A lot of the times, we focus on one over the other. A lot of the times we feel that, somebody is going to come back and tell us what we need to do over the next few months. But it is not only incumbent on the person who's hired, but it is also incumbent on the person who's being hired that these things, some of them proactively, sometimes even before getting into the organization, so that you are prepared. When you are in, you hit the ground running, and 6 months down the line, 1 year down the line, maybe that person is talking about him on my best hire.
Absolutely. One of the products at Effective is Effective Mentor. And one of the very important pieces there we have is 30, 60, 10, 90-day plan and coaching and hand holding so that not only somebody gets the job or gets into that dream position, but are able to really perform well and start on the right foot.
So that's something that is really, really going to be helpful. And trust me, a lot of times we don't put a lot of emphasis on something like this. But once you know what you need to do, then, it kind of drives the momentum, and you will have a lot more clarity as to what role you're going to perform and what your future is going to be.
Harsh, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. I
Pleasure.
really appreciate it.
Thanks, Radeep, for having me over.